As you've been listening to us here today, are you getting the sense that it is our desire that your complete approach to life be the relationship between the thoughts that you're thinking here in this moment and who you really are and that which you've become? And as you've been listening to us, can you feel, maybe more powerfully than ever before, that you might have deliberately chosen what many would call rockier or maybe even a bad beginning for the purpose of the contrast getting more going into your vibrational escrow earlier on?
May I say something?
Certainly.
Many times I do, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I really, really know that my beginnings have led to who I am today, and I most of the time like who I am today. Sometimes I know I have a lot more to go.
That's the point that we're really wanting you to feel, is that for everyone, regardless of the intensity of the drama, for everyone, the contrast that surrounds them is causing an expansion of who they are. And the only question ever to ask in any moment is, am I keeping up with that expansion? And rather than, should I have chosen, or would it have been better if my beginning had been different? Because we so want you to accept that your beginning was perfect, and that now, like everyone else, you have the option of getting up to speed with that which you have become as a result of the life you've lived, or not. But still, those are the options. In other words, if people spend a lot of time, and they do, they want to compare the conditions that surround them with the conditions that surround everyone else. And in that comparative experience, almost everyone gets pointed upstream, where if instead of comparing the condition or judging the condition or wishing that the condition had been otherwise, if instead you accept that there must have been something that you wanted, or you would not have been born full force into it, and that who you have become as a source energy being was dramatically enhanced because of it, and that now you have the option of reaping the benefit of all of that. We said earlier, and sometimes it's easier to hear when you're thinking in terms of all of humanity, but we said earlier that this generation will benefit mightily by that which previous generations lived in their contrast and put into their vibrational escrow, just as future generations will benefit by that which you all are living now. But to be one who actually benefits from their own contrast, now that really is something, you see. And that's where, when you come into alignment with the understanding of who you really are, and you approach this duality of beingness, of the source energy you and the infant physical you, and the source energy you and now this you, as you let all of your attention be upon closing that gap, and you spend no time trying to compare what was with what could have been, now you're off and running, and now you're reaping the benefit in the way you planned when you decided to come forth to begin with.
I feel that way. I feel that way a lot. But what I really am so glad to be called here today is because I'm ready to clean up the rest of it. And what I mean by that is, sometimes something will happen, or something is triggered, okay, and then I have those feelings, those very deep, painful feelings of whatever they are.
For example, give us a triggering moment.
Fear of loss. Like yesterday, it was interesting. Yesterday, I've been looking forward to this for a month. And yesterday, I stayed in a hotel last night, and I cried for a couple of hours because there were a lot of emotions that were being churned up yesterday. And one great feeling is a fear of loss. And it could be a fear of loss of a person, of that gentleman business, or just a fear of loss.
But you see, we can't let you just pass these things off, assuming that they're something that they're not. Okay. We want you to understand that that feeling that comes over you, that you are describing as fear of loss, is what it feels like when you choose to look at an aspect of your life in a way that the source energy part of you will not ever see it. In other words, the thing that we want you to feel, sometimes we'll be talking to someone who's had a lover and the lover has gone away. And they want to talk about how to bring the lover back. And we want to say to them that they're not missing their lover. They're missing the way they felt when they were with their lover. And then we want to say they're not missing their lover. They're not really missing the way they felt when they're with the lover. They are missing their connection with source energy, and they are defining it through the loss of this lover. So in a sort of similar way, we're wanting to say to you that that feeling of loss is always the same thing. It's you not keeping up with you. And you want to blame it on a rocky beginning. You want to blame it on not having a mother when you began. And we can understand why a lot of people would help you point in that direction. But we're here to tell you, negative emotion is always one thing and one thing only. It's you depriving yourself of your source energy. That's what it is. That feeling of loss is not letting yourself be up to speed with who you really are because of some choice of some thought. And so we watch people in therapy for years that never make any progress at all because they're looking for love in all the wrong places. They don't realize what that absent feeling is. And what it is a vibrational variance from who you really are. When you look at your life in a way that you choose to then describe it as a hard beginning, your inner being will never look at it that way, because your inner being understands that all of you come forth, and all of you come forth into an environment where you have the option of letting the wholeness of who you are be present in any moment or not, you see. You give far too much credit to the people who surround you and not nearly enough credit to your own ability to come into alignment with who you are. It's such an interesting thing to watch. You are all such independent little buggers. You come forth wanting to express your independence, but let one of you be born into an environment where it's sort of encouraged, and then you feel like you were deprived of necessary resources. And we say, you can't have it both ways. You are all independent beings wanting the independence of being able to choose your own thoughts so powerfully that you could choose bondage if you chose bondage. But that you have within you a guidance that always calls you to the alignment of who you really are.
May I say something?
Yes.
I agree with everything you say. I sometimes I can feel a certain way, and I'm sorry, I can't give you a great example right now, but something hits me, and my whole being changes, and and I think I'm okay. I think I've got it. I think I'm heading forward. I feel really good. And then somehow something hits me, and all of a sudden I feel differently, and I have to tell myself my life is good, my life is good, my life is good. And then I feel this way, and it's so discouraging. It becomes another layer, because I think I'm doing great, I feel good, I've made my life a certain way.
Well, it shouldn't be discouraging once. You see, here's the thing that we wish for you. We want you to consciously make the association between the way upstream thoughts feel and the way downstream thoughts feel. And we want, in other words, upstream thoughts are, I was abandoned at birth, and I got off on a sort of shaky foot, and I was never really appreciated, and life was really hard for me. And even if all of that is true, they're still really upstream thoughts. Downstream thoughts would go something like, well, apparently I was a really independent energy, and even though it's always known to you when you're coming into your physical experience what the immediate outcome is going to be, apparently I wasn't alarmed about having a mother that was not going to survive. In fact, it must have been something that I was not only willing, but eager to participate in, because I came headlong into this experience with great anticipation, and I'm glad that I've come. That's a downstream thought. An upstream thought says, well, the people who surrounded me, there should have been more of a support system. They should have filled in and done a better job for me. That's upstream. A downstream thought goes something like, well, apparently my independence had preceded me, and I was looking for an experience that would give me more contrast early on to get more stuff over there in vibrational escrow. And even though it could have been a lot easier, I'm happy for all that's over there in my vibrational escrow. And an upstream thought is, I needed my mother. A downstream thought is, I had my inner being. An upstream thought is, I needed others to be closer and guide me and show me the ways of the world more easily. A downstream thought is, apparently I really wasn't so interested in the ways of the world. I was more interested in coming into alignment with who I really am. An upstream thought is, well, I wasted a lot of time not knowing this. A downstream thought is, but now I'm figuring it out. And I wouldn't be figuring this out with the intensity that I'm figuring it out if it hadn't been for that strong catalytic life that I lived in the beginning. In other words, you don't have to go back and sort through it all and figure it all out. All you have to do is what every other person in the world has to do right here and now. You have to feel the alignment as you are closing the gap between you and you, or widening the gap between you and you. In other words, you have that knowledge within you, and a wonderful life that's spread out before you that gives you an opportunity to feel upstream or downstream thoughts. And that really is all there is to it. You don't need to spend any more time sorting that out. Here you are, finally born in this body with a support system around you, but it isn't the physical support system around you. Let us just put it to you bluntly. The physical support system that is there to support most of you is the problem that we are now trying to help most of you get rid of. It's that support system that in many cases coached you out of your awareness of your own connection to source energy. So it's really so way past time to let all of that go. You don't have to explain anything to anybody. You don't have to justify one more thing. And what we've noticed with most people who are standing in a place similar to where you're standing is that whether they were abandoned at birth or whether something else happened along the way, almost nobody is completely happy with where they stand right here and now. And they're looking for reasons to explain why they're not standing in a better place. And every bit of that is upstream. Every bit of that is upstream. You finally got to make peace with where you are. You finally got to say, where I am is where I am, and I'm just like everybody else. I'm putting my boat in the stream, and I got an option. I can turn it upstream or downstream, but those are my options. And when you start making more downstream choices, when you start reaching for the thought that feels best, not the best thought you've ever thought, but the best thought that you can find from where you are, as you reach for this downstream thought, what begins to happen is you begin to feel the wholeness of who you are approaching life. And suddenly, with not much effort, we're talking about a few days or weeks of reaching for increasingly better downstream, better feeling downstream thoughts, what begins to happen to you is you begin to feel so blessed and so filled with the love that you've been looking for that it's radiating through you, and then it becomes inconsequential of when it came to you. It's always been there for you, you see. Source would never send a baby into an environment of orphanage or into an environment of abandonment. Source has always been there for you, you see. And we just want you to know that even under the conditions that you've lived, you're not the first one that lost track of that bead to source. But now you're back on the track. And now it's more than going to make up for the time that you did not consciously know about it.
All I can say is I appreciate that, and I believe it.
Yes. So on a day-to-day basis, what kinds of things cause you some negative emotion? And let's turn some of them downstream.
Oh boy. Can I just say something about that too for a second? I think I'm headed downstream. I'll be headed downstream and headed downstream. And I guess what you're saying is, and then something happens
and to that we want to say, so what?
Okay. So that's what I need to do is what you're saying is when something happens and I feel myself going back upstream.
Laugh and say, there I go. I'm trying to head upstream.
Okay.
No logical reason for it.
Right,
Is there any way I can soften this and give myself a little feeling of relief?
And then as that happens, it will happen less because I give myself more and more relief.
Because what happens is, you see, without meaning to, you've developed a lot of upstream thoughts. Most everybody has. And if you just think them again and again, then law of attraction just makes them stronger and stronger. But here's the corker. Every time life causes you to offer an upstream thought, your inner being offers a stronger downstream thought.